walking meditation, and for reciting the sutras. May this practice center with its fourfold Sangha be supported by the three jewels and holy beings, well protected from the 8 misfortunes and the 3 paths of suffering. May parents, teachers, friends, and all beings within the 3 realms be filled with the most divine grace, and may it be found that in the world there is no place at war. May the winds be favorable, the rain seasonable, and the people's hearts at peace. May the practice of the noble community, diligent and steady, ascend the 10 bodhisattva stages with ease and energy. May the Sangha body live peacefully, fresh and full of joy, a refuge for all, offering happiness and insight. The wisdom of the awakened mind shines out like the full moon. The body of the awakened one is pure and clear as crystal. In the world, the awakened one relieves bitterness and suffering. In every place, the awakened mind reveals love and compassion.
Breathing in, I follow my in-breath from the beginning to the end. Breathing out, I follow my out-breath from the beginning to the end. Follow my in-breath, follow my out-breath. Breathing in, may I be peaceful, happy, and light in body. Breathing out, may I be peaceful, happy, and light in spirit. Peaceful, happy, and light in body. Peaceful, happy, and light in spirit. Breathing in, may I be free from anger. Breathing out, may I be free from fear and anxiety. Free from anger, free from fear and anxiety. Breathing in, may I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding. Breathing out, may I learn to look at myself with the eyes of love. Look at myself with understanding. Look at myself with love. Breathing in, may I live fresh and solid. Breathing out, may I live as a free person. Fresh and solid, a free person.
Caro Tai, cara comunità, buonasera. First, I would like to say thank you to Sister Saknyam, Sorella Colore, for the guided meditation. It was really intimate and calming, empowering, and strengthening. Thank you for this. Today is March the 12th in the year 2022, and we are in Centro Avalokita at our second day on compassion and courage. Yesterday, Tai Bao Tang, he showed and offered us many perspectives how to see and how to put into practice these two qualities, how to internalize them and how to embody them, and with the three actions to express them. And today we want to go and explore them further on. Today was a big day. Many of us were watching Plum Village inviting Thai's ashes back home to the Buddha field, back to Mother Earth. It was very touching and bringing Thai for me alive again. And I felt his presence. And I was in touch with all the seeds that had brought me to this community. And it was also very empowering and very moving. And I was blossoming inside. And I said, Tai, I'm giving a talk tonight about compassion and courage. But often I don't feel I have enough compassion and courage, and often I fail. And I want to share about that, but it can be maybe painful. And he said, will there be mindfulness? And I said, yes, Tai, there will be mindfulness. And then he said, it's okay. You can share. So today I want to share maybe another perspective. And I believe I'm not the only one who fails to be compassionate as much as I wish to, and to be as courageous as I wish to. And I'd like to begin with a story that contains these two qualities of compassion and courage. Once upon a time in old China, there was a Zen master, and he was walking with his student through the countryside, allowing his student to ask questions about the practice, about his progress. And so they were walking when they heard a terrible noise, a growling, a roaring in the far distance. And they decided to go and look for the source of this disturbing noise. So they walked closer and came to a pit, a deep pit where they found a tigress who fell into that pit, and she was roaring and growling and making noise. And they could see that she was starved out. She must have fell into that pit some days ago, and she was starving from hunger, and desperate and helpless, starving and crying out for help. And when they looked behind the tigress, they saw a tiger cub, the baby of this tigress, equally like starved out, only skin and bones. And the tigress was very nervous, and she was desperate, and she was looking at her own cub. And the Zen master realized that she's torn inside. She's taking care of her baby, on the one side, but on the other side, she's so starved out, she's fighting in her heart to eat her baby, to sacrifice her baby in order to live for herself. When the Zen master realized what was happening down there, he sent his student away to get help and to get some chunk of meat to throw down in the pit and to feed both of them, so that the mother at least wouldn't eat the baby, because the Zen master was filled with compassion for this mother. How desperate must you be when you are willing to eat your own baby? So the student ran for help and for meat, and the Zen master watched the scene. But it got worse. And as the mother got more nervous, and he felt she was about to attack her baby, he took off his long robe, and he took off his short robe, and he folded it, and he put it aside of him, and he stood there naked. And then he jumped into the pit. When the student came back with other students and chunk of meat, they came to the pit and looked inside, they saw that the tigress and the tiger cub were devouring their master. It's hard, isn't it? That's a real extreme story of compassion and courage. And I don't hope that any of us will encounter such a situation. I cannot imagine, and that's what I was saying at the beginning, that I would jump inside. Even I feel I have compassion for the mother, of course, but also for the baby, which is so innocent and ignorant of what will happen to her. And to have the courage to give my own life. But the Zen master got his courage from his compassion, from the inside of inner being, to see the suffering of the tigress and her baby as his own suffering. And he realized that he is basically a chunk of meat that he was sending the student for. And if his suffering is connected with the suffering of the tigress, it doesn't matter. So he gave his body, his flesh, for the tigress to eat on and to live. Compassion doesn't always need to be so extreme, but often is still very difficult to water. Compassion and courage are seeds in the garden of our consciousness, in the garden of our hearts, that need water to blossom and to bloom in our mind consciousness, so we can embody and express them, as Dai Bao Tang explained yesterday, by benevolent actions, compassionate actions. But often I don't see myself able to develop or generate true compassion, deep compassion, because often I lose it, I lose control of it, and my compassion becomes pity, and then I'm not in control of it anymore. So when I see suffering in front of me, and I feel with that suffering, like I feel with the tigress, often I feel it turns into pity for the tigress. She's so poor and she will die. and the baby will die, and I cannot do anything, and I become so helpless myself, because my compassion is not based on the inside of inner being, but I see the tigress as outside of me. The suffering in front of me I see as outside of me. And I see myself throwing in a piece of meat, but I also see that it would satisfy my guilt that I cannot help other than that. I would give something so I don't feel guilty. Or I would feel like some sort of gratification. I think I did something. I saw the suffering and I did something. Now I'm good. And we talked about the suffering in the world, the suffering in our cities, the suffering in our homes, the suffering inside of us. They're all the same. And I wonder how many times when we have compassion arising, when we look at suffering and the seed of compassion in us is watered by that image of suffering, by our heart, by our practice, by our humanity, that at one point it turns into pity and into guilt, that we are better off. What is there that we can do? And then we do something to feel better, to feel we have contributed, but maybe we didn't. And the same is true with courage. In this case, I see that the Zen master, he draws his courage from his compassion, from his insight that the suffering of the tigress is not different from his own suffering. He was able to empty himself from being a separate being and to offer himself, seeing himself maybe as an old man who can rescue the life of a young tiger cub, seeing life much larger than the ego, than his own person. So the compassion enabled him, empowered him to sacrifice his own life. Why am I not always courageous when I see injustice? When I feel compassion for the suffering I see, and I want to act, but I don't get that energy. I don't get that courage from my compassion. Or maybe I deny it. Courage has always to do with showing oneself vulnerable. I have to be vulnerable to be courageous. I have to do something that is not on my daily schedule. And I have to do something that is unsafe. I could take harm from being courageous. And then my mind kicks in. Is it worth it? Are you sure? Maybe better you retreat, somebody else will take care of it. And I separate myself from the suffering around me, not noticing in that moment out of my fear that there is no suffering outside of me, that suffering I see is born in this garden of seeds in my consciousness. Thai says, as practitioners, we are the gardeners of this garden of our heart. And we have to own this garden. Means we are responsible to water the plants in there, to water all these seeds in the store consciousness in order for them to sprout and grow into the mind consciousness and become thoughts, speech, and actions. And we are responsible for the mess if we don't take care, because we look away, because we feel our compassion turns into pity and we cannot take it. It becomes just too heavy. And we feel it's a burden and we cannot really take it. We don't have the capacity, and we turn away from the weeds growing. Or it is such a mess already and the weeds have overgrown the beautiful plants and the beautiful flowers that we don't have the courage to start uprooting all the weeds. You see, there are different seeds in that garden. Some of them as we deem beautiful, the flowers, the fruit trees, the fragrant bushes, and some of them we deem ugly and not useful, like the wheat. And the responsibility of a gardener is to water the seeds, to water the plants, the flowers of wholesome, of beautiful seeds, which are compassion, courage, understanding, peace, love, all that what Thai taught us. And he never said we need to water the weed. In German there is a saying, I wonder if you have one in Italian too. It says, bad weeds grow tall. Bad weeds, they always grow. They don't need water, they don't need attention, they don't need care. They grow everywhere. You have somewhere flowers and fruit and something, and you have these bad weeds growing like crazy. So don't pay attention to the weeds, to the bad weeds. They grow anyway. Our responsibility as a gardener is to take care of the wholesome seeds inside of us. Mindfulness, like Thai asked me. If we have a bad weed of anger, of frustration, of helplessness, like the tigress, of fear, what do we do to not become overwhelmed and to do something we don't want to do, like eat our tiger cub, to do something we would maybe regret later? We cannot just let that bad weed grow, the fear grow in us. It doesn't even need water. But we need to see what other seeds do I have in my garden. It's plenty. I just need to look around and water some of these seeds. And the first is always mindfulness. To have the plant of mindfulness grow in my heart, in my mind, to recognize the fear, the weed, to embrace it, to surround it, to change the picture. If there's a beautiful flower growing next to a weed, it always looks different than there is only weed growing. And with the flower of mindfulness growing in our garden, we can see what else flowers are needed here. Maybe I need some flowers of peace, and we water the seed in us, and we know how to water it. With our six senses, we need to guard our senses. That's the practice of a gardener. To water the seeds and to guard the doors of our senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our body, and our mind. When we pay attention to our garden, our heart can blossom, our heart can bloom, flourish, and we can be at peace. We can know what to do to take care when suffering comes. We don't have to wait until the weed overgrows the garden, because we cannot develop enough courage to water other plants, to uproot some weed. What are we paying attention to? If we only look helplessly at the weed growing and growing in our hearts, clogging the garden, what are we paying attention to? We have 6 senses which we guard, that not too much weed, not too much suffering is coming inside of us, but we can also choose what kind of seeds, what kind of flowers we want to invite into our being, into our hearts. We can look at beautiful images, at inspiring quotes. We can listen to profound and wise teachers. We can study the Dharma. We can be in nature. We can do things that nourish our souls, our hearts. Or we can do nothing and not water these seeds and watch the weed grow. What are we paying attention to? Dai Bao Tang mentioned it yesterday. And you hear in English, you say, you are paying attention. That means it's not really clear if it's money or so. It's attention. It's kind of a currency. You're giving away something from you. Now consider that. Like, imagine yourself in a shop and you want to buy shoes. And they say, this shoes is 100 euros. And you say, 100 euros, I have to give from the money I earned very hard and I worked for. For these shoes, they don't even make a week. No. Show me other shoes. So we want to make sure when we buy something that it is worth it, that it will benefit us, that it will bring us joy, and that it will stay with us and make us happy. Now, sadly, what I see in myself and in us human beings is that with our attention, we are much more generous and wasteful. You show us something, be it good or bad, we look at it, we listen to it, we take it in. All kinds of food, visual, audible, edible, news, movies, articles, conversations, thoughts. We just take them in and then we feel heavy. And then we feel we cannot digest them. And then I might feel compassion, but it's already so heavy that it turns into pity and I become helpless. And with such a full belly that I cannot handle anymore, I cannot bring up the courage to change something. I need to spit it out. So we have to, at the beginning, pay attention to what we are paying attention to. Ask yourself, how much of my attention am I paying to whom or what, and for how long, and what does it do with me? Do I feel nourished? Or do I feel helpless? We want to water the flowers of our garden. You know, compassion, often we see compassion is fine, compassion is a noble seed, a noble quality, but we also have limits to our compassion. I cannot tell that I have unconditional compassion. I wish I had. I can bear a lot of suffering. I can listen to a lot of suffering from others. I train myself to guard my sense with the seed of compassion, to also invite and water the seed of understanding, of acceptance, of love for my fellow human beings, for myself. But there comes a point when the suffering of the other reaches a point that it conflicts my ideals, what I deem right, what I deem wrong. When it goes to this border, I say, okay, that's it. I'm a compassionate person, but this is too much. So what is happening right now? There was this flower of compassion blossoming, smiling and being fragrant, blooming in my heart. And then I say, no, I cannot have compassion for this person. This person is doing wrong. And this flower of compassion is wilting and retreating and dying. And instead a weed is growing, the weed of intolerance, the weed of discrimination. Because of what I believe is right, I have not met, I have not touched. So it must be wrong. And I'm not wasting my compassion on somebody who is doing unjust things. So where do we get with this state of mind, with this limited ability, with this limited capacity? Are there really two seeds of compassion? I know there are not. I know there is not a seed of compassion for the right things and for just things, and one seed for unjust and wrong things, which I can abandon and say, I cap off my compassion here. And this person gets all my compassion because it is doing what I deem right. Does this person who is doing the right thing in my eyes actually need my compassion? I'm in its favor already. Compassion by nature is to go further, to go through pain, to feel the pain and the suffering of others as my own. Just as the Zen master felt the struggle of this tigress, the pain, the hunger, the torment of having to eat her baby to survive. This needs compassion, not things that are easy. And when I'm in touch with this and I can recognize it as my own, I'm able to be courageous from that source of compassion. And as we said, courage is being vulnerable, being unsafe, not knowing what will happen. I have to sacrifice my safety. We can ask ourselves often when we doing something, or we wishing for something, like, what do I want? But instead of asking ourselves, what do I want? We can ask ourselves, what I'm willing and able to sacrifice for this. Like, I guess many of you when you were young, you wanted to be a football star or a model or an astronaut, right? Or a rock star. I see you smiling, so I'm not too far away. Me too. So I want to be a rock star and see what is happening in my mind. What do I see? I see myself on a stage with a great, expensive guitar, and there are 100,000 people in front of me, and they're cheering, and I'm doing what I like most. I'm playing music with my best friends, and people love it, and we're earning money with it, and we're touring the world. It's fantastic, isn't it? This is what I imagine when I ask myself, what do I want? Now I ask myself the question, what I'm willing to, for my aspiration. And let me tell you that I have played in a band, and I have played the guitar, and if I've carried my guitar and my amplifier from little club to little club, we didn't receive even any money. We were happy that we had a stage to stay on. We were terrible. And because we were terrible, we were best friends, but we hated each other, and there was nobody listening to us. Maybe 2, 3 people, and they were only there because, I don't know, they didn't find the exit maybe. And then after that, you have to carry your amplifier and your guitar back to the car, no money, but you're hungry. You want to do it again? Let's do it again. No, but I don't like it. So what am I willing to sacrifice for my dream, to play, to do that, what I really want to do? How do I get the courage? Am I able to suffer for it? Am I willing to suffer what is dear to me? Am I willing to accept it as a suffering, as painful? And luckily, as practitioners and as students of Tei, we are able to train ourselves. We are able to smile at our suffering. At least is what Thai wants us to. Thai said that smiling is a practice. And the lady asked him, I do understand that breathing and smiling is a practice. But how can I smile when my heart is full of sorrow and pain? And you see, I immediately feel for her because I know that feeling. How can I smile at myself when my heart is broken, when my heart is full of sorrow? How can I do that? I feel compassion, but it turns immediately into pity, into self-pity. I know that state. I'm helpless. I don't have energy. I don't have courage. And Thai said, we must learn to smile at our sorrow, to embrace it as our own, as something that is there in our heart. It wouldn't cry out in pain if it wasn't there. You know, the Zen master could have said, like when they looked into the pit and saw the tigress roaring and growling and walking up and down like just flesh and bone, he could have said, I don't see anything. Student, do you see anything? Let's go further. I continue your mentoring. We know when there's something painful, and that's the best sign. And that's the finger that shows towards compassion, that shows towards the smiling, the accepting, the embracing, watering the seed of mindfulness, recognizing there is suffering, and it's not outside of me. It might appear outside of me, but just to point that there is still suffering inside of me. So whatever happens in the world that we feel painful, that make us suffer, we have to be honest with ourselves and see that it waters a seed, a painful seed of a bad weed in us, of fear, of discrimination, of despair, helplessness, anger, whatever it is, it's in us. And often we are too close to ourselves that we would see it. And often we are not willing to give ourselves the same love as we would offer to our loved ones, to our best friends, to our partner, our family. When my best friend comes to me and says, I'm really in a bad state, I feel bad, I suffer, I take him by the hand and I say, come here, sit down. I'm going to make you a cup of tea. I want to hear some music. Here's a blanket. I made some cookies. Try this cookie, it's really sweet. Do you want to talk about it? And then I sit next to him and he talks about it. And because I love my friend, my sister, my dad, my mom, it is my pain. And I cannot be at peace before the suffering of my beloved one is at least eased, released, and hopefully relieved and transformed. But it needs recognition. And while I'm able to offer this to my friend, to my family, to my beloved ones, I'm often not able to offer this to myself. To tell myself, what is it, my dear? Come on, sit down here. Find a nice space. Want a blanket? Come on, curl into a blanket. It always helps. Want a cup of hot tea? There's a cookie. I can take a walk. How often are we able to show ourselves the love we are able to show others? To water seeds of compassion in us without turning pitiful. Oh, I'm so poor. Poor me. Look what has happened to me, and it is so painful. And nobody's here. I'm all by myself. Feel like the tigress. I want to eat myself up because I don't know what to do. And here, as students of Tay, with his unconditional love, we know what we can do. He says, find a place. And Thay does it, and he shows it, and he teaches us. Many of us have seen Thay speaking to his suffering in his Dharma talks. Thay was not free of suffering. He said, I am suffering. I'm a human being. I am a suffering human being. But I know how to suffer because I am able to take care of it. In the garden of my heart, I make sure there's enough space for the flowers and for the wheat, that they can coexist. And no one is taking over too much space. Everybody has a space, and everybody enjoys the presence of the other. So when Thay suffers, and he was saying this, he said, oh, my dear suffering, welcome, I know you're a part of me. And Thay spoke in a self-dialogue to his suffering, and the whole hall was giggling, finding it funny that Thay becomes so naive or childish and sweet in a way. And there was a sort of guilt I found. Also in my giggling, I said, this Zen master, this realized being is talking like a child, very sweet. But he offered us his practice. He offered everything he does. His realized practice of embracing, of accepting his own suffering. And he offered us a way how to do it, to address it, to sit with it, to give it a comfortable space. Thai taught us to once a day invite our suffering from the basement where we want to keep it. We want to keep it locked in the basement while we are enjoying or not the living room, because we feel there is suffering. We feel there is something in the house that makes me feel uneasy, that makes me feel painful. And I know it is living in the basement because I locked it up there. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear of it. But still, I cannot enjoy my living room with all the flowers and the couch and the window and the sunlight coming in, because I know there's something I'm ignoring. And I'm exactly not doing that, what Thai has taught me, which I giggled about. Speaking to it, inviting it, taking care of it as if it would be my best friend who is suffering, just because it's me. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I had a bird. These birds, I don't know the English name. There are green ones and there are blue ones. And they can talk, and mine could also talk. And was my best friend because I was a single kid by then. Still then, later I got a sister. And I loved to be with that bird and to observe it and to see it. And what struck me most is the way it communicated with itself. It helps me, and actually it taught me. His name was Pippi. He was a blue one, Pippi. Taught me so much, and I'm still learning from him. Pippi had this little mirror in his cage. So when he was standing on his bar, he would look into the mirror. And he would not identify himself in the mirror. He thought it's another bird, I guess. And he had good days and he had bad days. So at bad days, he would yell at this other bird in the mirror and tell him how bad it is. And I don't know, because I don't understand bird language, but I could really tell that he was upset and give him a bad time, this guy in the mirror. And I was just like awestruck there. And then there were days he was talking lovely into the mirror and said, I love you, and he would do like this and would kiss himself, kiss the other bird, because he was so happy to have company. And by this, yes, it's funny. The same as Thai. Thai is funny when he tells us how he speaks to his suffering, how he addresses himself, but it's such a big and deep lesson. So this little bird, just as Thai taught me, how can I take care of myself? Like just as if I was another person that I love, maybe. I look at somebody and I feel I want to care for you. I'm caring for you. And I will help you. I will be with you until your suffering is less. And I want to learn how to do this for myself. So when suffering comes, and suffering will come, there's the first noble truth. There is suffering. There was suffering, and there will probably, at least for a long time, will be suffering. But that I will learn to smile at my suffering, to learn to be with it and to give it a space next on my couch and in my heart. I don't think we can afford leaving anyone behind as a human race. As I said, we think or say, and it might be true, there are bad people, evil people with evil intentions, very selfish, they don't care for the well-being of others. But can we really leave these people behind if we are truly compassionate? Isn't there a way to show them that we care, that we feel their suffering, to show them that we also suffer the same way, to offer them our practice that we have learned to be with our suffering, to embrace it, to invite it in, to give it a comfortable space, and to be with it, to offer a shoulder, a hug, an ear, time, means to be with it. There's an African proverb that touches me a lot because I know that it is so true and we are so not doing it. It says, "The neglected child will burn the village to feel its warmth." Do you hear that? The neglected child will burn the village to feel its warmth, because we have neglected it. We have excluded it out of the community. What can it do? It is not connected with us. So it will destroy us in order to feel the warmth that we have felt for one another, but excluded this child. And it must have happened in African villages, and it's happening right around us, and it's happening right in our own hearts. And we are the neglected child, and we are the community. We are both in our hearts. And we have black sheeps, and we have, as I said, people that we really don't like, or we think they just don't fit in here. They shouldn't be born. They don't have a place here. We cannot afford to leave those people behind. They have a garden. They have seeds. We just have to help them to become gardeners. So Thai teaches us how to deal with emotional storms, how to weather storms when they get us and we lose control, and our compassion that we have been watering diligently and caringly turns into pity, becomes heavy, and we turn against people and are not able to smile anymore because we are confused, we are shaken. We have a stormy mind, cloudy, can't see clearly, don't feel the solidity. Thai says we are just like a tree in a storm. When the storm hits the tree and you look at the treetop is swaying. And if it's a heavy storm, there are branches breaking off the treetop. The leaves are like everywhere. And you wonder if it's going to break. If we are in our head in times of emotional storms or too much mental load, not being careful guarding our senses and watering the seeds that keep our garden colorful, diverse, and spacious enough to hold all kind of seeds and flowers and plants, we can also break. We can lose balance. It can break us. And that's a pity because it doesn't have to. Thai says, when you shift your attention at a storm from the treetop down to the trunk, see, the trunk is very solid. The trunk is not swaying. There's nothing happening. It looks like there is no storm at all. It looks very peaceful and solid. And the good news is we also, as human beings, we have a trunk. In times of emotional storms, of storms that enter our minds, we just go out of our head. We have the breathing, right? And we breathe into our belly And how often do we put our hands on our belly and we feel our belly rising, breathing in, and falling, breathing out. And our trunk is just a little bit upon our belly button. So whenever a storm comes and we are able to come back to our trunk, we are safe. And what it needs to do that, as easy it may sound right now, is the compassion for myself, to see and to recognize and to acknowledge to myself, I am suffering. And I'm not letting it overload me. I'm not staying in my head where I will be shaken around. I will come back to myself. I will come back to my trunk, to my true self, to the breathing in my trunk. And I will have the courage to retreat, not to react, not to run away. I will have the courage to face the storm, to smile at the storm, to say, darling, my dear suffering, my dear pain, I know you are there. You live inside of me, just as I do. We are in this together from the beginning of time. We are a Sangha. I don't want to neglect you, and I don't want to be separated from you. Let us find ways to live in harmony. Let us find ways to care for one another. I might have to find some courage because I'm not used to care for myself. Sometimes I think I don't deserve it. Maybe I was raised that I don't believe I deserve any love or care, not from others, but especially not from myself. But I want to see you as somebody I love, as family, as Sangha. So together we can grow to a beautiful garden, to a colorful garden, to a diverse garden, just like a Sangha. Different flowers from different countries, different ages, different personalities. Some need more water, some need less. Look at our Sangha. Some need no water at all, some need more shade, some need more sun, some need a lot of care. Some are pretty cool, they don't need, some have spikes, and you come and touch them and, that will hurt you. Just to learn to love with compassion and dare to be close to yourself. And all this we can do by walking, breathing, eating. All the practices Thai has taught us are bringing us back to our true selves, to the garden of our heart. So I wish that compassion and courage and many more seeds will be with you on this path. And don't forget you have a Sangha, you have a whole garden. You might believe you are a fragile flower, but you are a beautiful flower. And you have a trunk. However small you are, you have a trunk that will be solid in a storm. Your steps can be grounding, transforming, and healing. Your breath can be very intimate and inclusive. And your mindful eating will give you the energy to be there for yourself and for all beings. Well, I think we are at the end. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your practice. And I think we're going to close here with 3 sounds of the bell. You can come back to your trunk. Since we are together here, if you have a suffering that is present now, you can come back to that suffering, to that pain. And we are here. We are at least on this screen together. So we can, our presence is there for one another. Your pain is our pain. Together we have enough space to embrace it, to smile at it, to accept it as it is, and give it a chance to see itself. Just like my little bird, to look at itself. Just before I forget and before we end, Thai has invited us, it was 2012 I think, when Plum Village turned 30, that every meditation hall should have a mirror. And some meditation halls did it, I see, but some didn't, because maybe they thought, he was joking or he's been funny again. But telling you the story with my bird, I truly believe that it is more than just checking my posture, if I'm really upright, that Thai wanted us to look into a mirror when we're sitting and seeing ourselves. And seeing and recognizing how we are seeing ourselves. And I took it to heart, and I always have a little mirror, like a shaving mirror in my room, and I put it at the wall. And in the evening before I go to bed, I just sit in front of this little mirror and look at me and say, hello, how are you? How was your day? And I'm not even judging or doing something big, but I'm just looking at how I look. Is there tension? Are there wrinkles? Am I wasted? Is there still energy? Is there love? Is there connection? Do I recognize myself? And the longer I look at myself, together with my mindful breath, I'm able to generate love and acceptance for this person in the mirror. And then I say, I'm tired, I go, good night, I love you. And then I go sleep. So if you see a mirror and it is not too expensive, you might want, or maybe you have even a mirror at home, you want to try this. And when you feel bad, you just sit in front of the mirror, just as my little bird, Pippi, and you can talk to yourself. And maybe at the beginning you will start yelling at yourself, saying, you stupid little thing, why did you say this to your boss? Now you're fired. And you say, I had to be honest. I just had to be honest to him, and we will find another job. Don't worry, I see you're maybe afraid that I won't have enough income, but it's all good. We'll water some other flowers. And then maybe you will smile at yourself. And all is good. So good luck with that practice. Let's close our eyes, connect with ourselves, connect with the love we feel for ourselves. You might want to give yourself a hug now, listening to 3 sounds of the bell. Let's do that. Hug yourself. Put your hand on your shoulder, your head on your shoulder.